Hey everybody, so glad you could make it today. This is our little coffee clutch with my buddy Dave Summers from Pine Mountain Digital. We're going to have a deep dive into this whole conversation about misinformation culture and whether it's toxic for businesses. So again, I kind of hope you brought your coffee. I know I sure did. I was just about to start the conversation with Dave and ask him that very first question. Do you think misinformation is toxic?
It absolutely is. It's toxic on so many different levels, and I'm flattered that your first show, you've chosen an expert in misinformation. You know what I mean? Dave Summers. I pride myself on my misheld fake news beliefs. Oh, there's the sticker. This is what Jim gets for being my pal. He gets a sticker.
Well, I wanted to start with you because you're in this digital communications thing, and I think it's guys like you that get the word out. I mean, when you think about misinformation and the misinformation effect, what it really is the tendency for post-event information to sort of tarnish what we remember from the event. And this is true in the society as a whole, and it's true in business. Think about any kind of conflict that a corporate entity has, any kind of bad news that comes out, they immediately get out there and start spinning it. And as well they should. Sometimes there's real legitimate communication that has to happen to help the organization, retain its brand value and so on. But sometimes I think it's used in the wrong way or an inappropriate way, and we spin ourselves right up into a situation where we're misleading people, and that's where I think it can become toxic.
I'm in agreement with you, and again, we're challenged right now because it's the only real shortage. I forget the economist who said this. I think it was Herb Simon. The only real shortage these days is it's not material goods. It's not money. Everything is progressively getting better. The only real shortage is the human attention span. And you don't want to waste your time as a person walking around with one of these things, wasting your time trying to learn a different point of view or accept a different perspective or something that challenges your core beliefs. Number one, because it takes too long. And number two, because many people feel it challenges their personal definition of who they are and how they see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. But you kind of touched on it, but it's the ability to rapidly spread misinformation.
Oh, never been easier.
That really undermines trust. And we go back a ways now. I write a lot about trust. It's in my books. It's in my articles. I wrote a whole series on decency for CEO World. All that stuff focused on making sure that we tell the truth, that we keep our promises, that we, do the kinds of things that we would want companies to do for us, as customers and as stakeholders in those businesses and so on. And it's really, really frustrating when you see people out there spinning the truth to their advantage.
Well, it's interesting too in that who's doing the spinning. We're at and I'm not going to enter into politics here at all, but suffice to say, we're at a sort of friction point right now between what I would call sort of the populists versus the elitists, and they both sort of vehemently hate each other and cancel each other. That's a word you hear a lot these days. And there's no middle ground. It's binary. You know what I mean? It's 100% this or 100% that. And I think we've lost this ability to sort of suss out the gray area or the common ground between I'm saying two big groups, but frequently, at least at the organizational or corporate level, you have these affiliations to the elites who typically are running these types of organizations, of course, the best and brightest, right? But I'm going to sort of delve into a little bit of wonky statistical stuff here. A person I've interviewed before, an expert who I really like listening to, is Howard Yu, Professor Howard Yu. And he's the Lego Professor of Innovation, I think at Stanford or something like that. I probably misquoted that, Howard. He's fantastic. But he mentions in a recent post that he did that, the smarter people are, okay, the more mistakes they make when something doesn't confirmation bias, right? Confirm their worldview, because they see it as attacking their personal identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's something to be said, and I'm going to shift a little bit from the point, I guess, but I think it's all part of the same thing. When you think about it, we've kind of lost the ability to listen to each other. Mm-hmm. So to the study that you cite, to the research that you cite, yeah, it's hard to shift your paradigm when someone offers an idea that bucks up against it. Right. And part of why that is so is we're not really good listeners. We're not really good engagers. We don't want to learn more. We don't want to understand people. We want to live inside our silos. Mm-hmm. And what makes it even more reinforceable, maybe that's not quite the right term, but the thing that makes that idea even stronger, that notion of silo effect, is you've got 1,000 different places to get your information.
Exactly.
And you can find one that fits right in the middle of your thought.
Exactly. Who's my trusted advisor? Listen, before we go too far down that path, a close friend of mine who's a pretty high-end organizational psychologist kind of volleyed a question back at me about this. And so I'm going to ask you this question. Let's flip your question, Jim. Did toxicity create the misinformation culture?
Wow, that's heady stuff. I wish you warned me about that question ahead of time. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think if we say toxicity and we talk about bias and we say that even there's unintentional bias going on out there, then maybe so. Maybe that's a toxic thing, and as a consequence, when that gets amplified, you search out people that agree with you and are on your side, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And maybe that continues to be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we have that kind of stuff, I don't really. I don't
want to make this a half hour. And I'm going to do you a favor. I don't want to make this a half-hour program on confirmation bias. You know what I mean? I think that's what kind of progress do we make in that direction? What I would offer up, and you mentioned it before, is there are so many sources now, and they can come at you so quickly now. Way back when, Marshall McLuhan, was known as saying the medium is the message, and there are so many people who are on these YouTube channels or on these conversational blogs or these specific Twitter followers, and whatever floats in, from that source, it came in on the famous newspaper of record Twitter feed. You know what I mean? It came in on that cable TV personality, YouTube, segment, and it just feeds into your definition of who you are and your worldview. I think organizations, to your point, have to be able to step back from that personal stuff. And I think organizations, and this is a challenge I have for you, is you're my go-to culture guy. I mean, how do you establish, or how do you even remotely approach what it takes for an organization to become better at listening? I mean, that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But it starts out, I believe, anyway, with a vision story, and that's the thing that can compel people to work together. If you do a really good job of articulating where you want to go as an organization, what your vision of the future looks like, the customers that you have, how you service them, the products and services that you sell to those, the people that you have delivering that stuff. You go into detail there and really tell a vivid, compelling story. That gives anybody in your organization something to rally around. And even when your organization's challenged, maybe it's bad publicity or something goes wrong in the marketplace, what have you, you've got a core group of people that are ready to defend the borders because they've bought into the story. And now, if we step that back to sort of society at large, we've kind of lost that vision. What's the compelling thing that makes us who we are? We don't have a compelling thing. We've got several.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what group you are, you believe very strongly and want to defend those borders too. So what I see being missing from the equation is that common story, the thing that brings us together, the thing that made the greatest generation go and fight in World War II. That's the thing that's I think we've kind of lost track of. And I think we can get it back. I'm very positive we can get it back. But right now we're in this kind of weird, bifurcated, siloed reality.
Yes. But I'm going to play devil's advocate and challenge you a little bit and say the reason why we came together in the greatest generation was because we had a bad guy. We had a clearly recognizable, identifiable bad guy. I mean, even that's projected forward in a lot of even stories now, like The Watchmen. There's this great graphic novel comic book series, The Watchmen. And, until there was established a common enemy, the world was falling apart. You know what I mean? Nations would not work together. Peace would not occur. You know what I mean? The unity would not occur, unless there was a bad guy. And if the bad guy doesn't exist, do we need to create him? That's another weird place to go.
Well, what's interesting about the point I think you're making there, Dave, is we do have that common enemy. It's in the other silo. And that's the thing that's fueling us. It's sort of the nationalization of everything that we're living in now. And as a consequence, it sort of fuels the grievance fire. We've got all kinds of problems over all kinds of things. And when you listen to an advocate on one of these topics, they come out really strongly on not only what they believe in, but how bad the other side of the argument is. And if you believe in the other side of the argument, you're a bad person. There must be something wrong with you. And that's the thing that continues to promote this kind of division. And I think it happens back in the workplace, because guess what? We've got people who are in those different camps coming together supposedly to work together on getting the job done. And sometimes those grievances come to the fore, and as a result, you get poor performance, productivity dips, and it really puts leadership in a tough position, because they can't necessarily take a side. They have to figure out how to get people to play nice in the sandbox, even when they have really different beliefs and really different ways of thinking about what's important, how to get from here to there.
What you're saying sounds good to me, but again, the headlines in the news, the stories you hear, I mean, there are a lot of people who feel that unless the company they work for completely is in alignment with their philosophy, their spiritual view of the world or whatever, they don't want to work for them,
Sure.
Or they want to bring about a change in that organization to make it more in alignment with their definition of reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certainly that's part of it too. But I'm assuming that we've got a workforce that have decided to work here, and now we're trying to go in and drive the culture and improve performance and become indispensable. My recent book, in fact, helped me launch it earlier in the year, is indispensable. Build and lead a company customers can't live without. One of the key aspects of the book is you've got to have alignment of strategy, vision, culture, leadership, people, your change frameworks and so on. And it's hard to get alignment when people don't get along.
A lot of that is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, well, I was going to say messaging.
You got to play the cards you're dealt. You're a leader. You're in charge. You got to play the cards you're dealt. But I would offer up, if you do have a chance to, hiring is such an, how do you hire for cultural fit? You know what I mean? That's another back up the time stream type of question as well. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I was interrupting you, Dave, but I guess that's part of a live conversation. Sometimes the passion comes out. But yeah, as far as that's concerned, I think one of the ways that you can gauge cultural fit is to make sure, again, you use your vision story as part of your hiring process. If you can help people understand what they're about to step into, then they have a choice. Do you want to be part of an organization that has these things in it? The outline of the story. Present that in the interview cycle. And there's all kinds of assessments and things like that. And I'm a proponent of using any kind of information you can to help make good choices in that regard. But what I was going to kind of riff on, and it was back a point or two ago that you were making, it was around messaging and how that gets messed up, even inside an organization. There was an experiment done many years ago where they showed participants a fender bender, a little car accident. And then a few days later, they went back and asked, how fast were those vehicles going when they smashed into each other? Keyword smashed. This is a fender bender now. And of course, the respondents, based on the way the question was framed, said, well, they were going pretty fast. And this is sort of a parking lot situation. They weren't going, it's 5 miles an hour kind of thing.
Sure.
So just the way we message, the words we choose, how we frame what we're trying to get across in the marketplace to our people is absolutely critical and deserves a lot of deliberate attention. You can't just wing it. You've got to get out there and make sure you're messaging in alignment with what you're trying to achieve as a business. And I found that study really fascinating, to tell you the truth.
Well, exactly. There's that, and there's the gotcha question, where the, deer in the headlights politician has some type of aggressive reporter who asks them a no-win question, basically. And the only option really the politician or the leader or whoever has is to not answer the question at all, because any answer that comes out of their mouth can be spun, to your point before, this idea of spinning. If you don't mind, let's just kind of jump back for a second and talk about just misinformation.
Yeah.
Now, misinformation, again, how do you define misinformation?
Well, again, I think it's taking the facts and leaving some of the details out, and taking the parts that you do sort of decide to hone in on, and using words that can be inflammatory, misleading, and so on, to get an effect. And the effect, of course, is your audience. So whoever's listening to you, whether it's the marketplace, your employees, if you're a political person, your constituents, what have you, you're taking just parts of the truth, and you're beating the drum loudly to make some point that's consistent with whatever your worldview is. But
Jim, again, Dave, the devil's advocate, and I should have my hat on here. But Jim, we don't have enough time to read every single white paper. We don't have the time for every single piece of information to come through. I don't have that. I don't have a PhD in particle physics or anything like that. I don't. So, I had a film teacher once who basically said the whole art of filming, the visual side of it, is framing. Okay? There's the stuff you decide to include in the frame.
Right.
Okay. A person makes a decision about what's in the frame and what's outside of the frame. See, to me, that's the whole philosophy you need to inject in people's heads is what's outside the frame. This thing you're getting is conceivably what's outside the frame. That's question number one. And question number two is who created that frame? Who is the framer? Who is the cameraman of that particular shot, that particular point of view? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of a great segue into where I want to go next, which is what do we do about it? And what you just outlined are, in my mind anyway, a couple of the things that we've got to get better at. And we need to teach people how to get better at, by the way. And I think it should start as early as grammar school, frankly. But it's that idea of being media literate, where you can understand the source of the information that you're consuming, and that you've got the critical thinking skills necessary to be able to determine what of that message that you've just received, however you received it, even if it's quick, to your point, and you don't have time to dive deep, you can at least sort of determine, where is this message coming from? What do they want me to do with it? What's the intention? And then apply the critical thinking skills to kind of discern whether that's something that you want to take in and use or not. The reality is people are gullible and they love drama. So, advertisers know that. So they use those techniques as a way to kind of suck you in, to bring you forward, to make you believe. And if you're a dealer in misinformation, you're using people's gullibility and their interest in drama, or the excitement that they get from seeing drama, to your advantage. And that's how we kind of promote it. So I think that's one of the things that we can do. Have you thought much about what to do about this?
I think we need to educate more people, and I guess the grammar school, whatever, the elementary school thing is a fair analogy. We need to educate more people to discern that there is there's a person off camera. There's a person standing outside this white paper. There's a person standing outside this scientific study.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're leaving stuff out of the frame, to kind of use your analogy, right?
Thank you for smoking. You know what I mean? How many, way back when, how many doctors said, Winston's were, 9 out of 10 doctors recommended Winston's. You know what I mean?
It tastes good, like a cigarette should.
I think we need to educate people about, just querying and being aware of who's framing and how they're framing.
Right.
But also we need to become more patient. And I know that runs counter to everything we're dealing with right now. We're in such a big fat hurry with everything.
Yeah.
We need to and I think both of those things lend themselves to becoming a better listener, kind of coming full circle around your thought.
Yeah. For sure. And I agree with you. I think we do have to figure out how to step back and be more patient with ourselves and with each other. We've got to give ourselves the time to understand better. We've got to give ourselves the time to seek out alternative points of view, and then apply our critical thinking skills as a way to determine, where we are on a particular topic, not just follow the herd, which I know goes against sort of the human condition. We're all about that herd mentality, but in reality, it's each person's making a choice. They're deciding where to get their information. They're deciding, what their point of view is. And if it's ill-informed and not very deep, then how much value is there in having that opinion? You've got to dig deeper. And all the work that I do, of course, is promoting that concept, right? And you've seen me do that with the coaching work that I do, as well as the consulting work. So, I feel like it's up to us to be transparent. It's up to us to help people learn how to ask questions and get the background on a particular topic before we sign up for it.
I think so, but the one additional point I would make on that in our remaining minutes here, the one additional point I would make on that is we have to get better at the appropriate moment, not every time, but at the appropriate moment, stepping back from the emotion side, the emotional canyon, the emotional rift,
Sure.
and stepping away and try to be cool about it somehow, and sort of, and say this business decision may not have political overtones. You know what I mean? This
Right.
business decision may not have international geo trade
Right.
issues. You know what I mean? It's a
Sure.
business decision,
Right.
so
Right.
how you do that, well, that's why we go to big smart people like you, Jim, to help us figure that out.
Well, yeah, thanks for that plug there, Dave. Hey, look, I'm going to grab another coffee, so
Yeah, me too.
I think it's time to kind of wrap it up. But again, thank you so much. I want to let folks know next broadcast will be Friday, June 25th, where my guest Rhett Power and I will be discussing this question, which could be a fun one. And Dave, I'm sure you're going to weigh in on this one too.
Mm.
Is there something disingenuous about a leader's pursuit of celebrity? Ooh. Yeah, good. So anyway, with that, goodbye, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Jim.